I have seen in my own life and a number of other people's lives some spectacular things take place when a person grasps this idea. Yesterday, I pointed out that one of our great problems was that we thought we were physical beings. And of course we're not. If we were just physical, then there would be a limit to what we could do. There's a limit to what that table can hold. You start piling weight on that table, and you're going to get to a point where the table's just going to crush under the weight. It's like the story of the camel and the straw. You put too much straw on the camel's back, and you get to a point you just put one straw on too many, and that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. We are spiritual beings living in physical bodies. Now, you and I have an intellect, and through the proper use of the intellect, we can do wonderful things in our life. Now, we used a drawing yesterday and in the previous lesson, and I'd like to suggest that you come back and focus your attention on this drawing again. Now, remember, we were talking about the mind. We have no difficulty getting an image of a person's body. We see our own every day. We see it reflecting back from the mirror. Every time we look at someone else, we see their body. Well, the problem we have is that we have no image for the mind. Well, of course, in the previous lesson, we gave you one. And we said, let this represent the mind. And then we pointed out to let this represent the body. And we took and we divided this, and we said this actually is the creative, or the start of all creation in our life, this part of our personality. Because as this power flows into us, we can do whatever we choose with it. And of course, we can build a negative concept, or we can build a positive concept. But we have the choice of what we're going to build. Now, ask yourself, if you could have anything you want, and it starts in the form of an image, what would you start imaging? Because that's really the name of the game. It's name it and claim it. Now, this works both on a negative as well as a positive basis. Because as you take this image, you can accept it, you can reject it. As the images come into our mind, we can do anything we want with them. We do not have to get emotionally involved with them. Now, this part is the spiritual side of our personality. This side of us has no ability to reject an idea. It just accepts whatever comes into it and instantly and automatically moves the body into that vibration. In other words, the image begins to move into form. Now, as we go on in the upcoming lessons, we're going to talk about more how that happens through vibration and through attraction. I want to share something with you, a couple of stories, and then one personal experience. I was in Jackson, Mississippi back in 1977. I had gone into Jackson to do a seminar, and as I was waiting for my bags to come down the chute, this gentleman came over and he shook hands with me and introduced himself. He told me his name was M.C. Duncan and he was from Oklahoma City. He was the president of Oklahoma Life. And he said, you know, I've been listening to you all week and I've been watching you all week. And I said, well, that's interesting. Where was I? And he just laughed, and he had been listening to cassettes and watching the videos. And as fate would have it, we were there for different reasons, but we were both going to the same hotel. So we shared a cab, we went over to the hotel, we checked in at the registration desk, and then we just wandered over in the foyer and sat down and started chatting. Now, you're going to find that everyone that starts to study themselves, they become great readers. They always want to get into good books because they want to find out more about the subject. It's so fascinating. Well, he and I got talking about the various books that we liked. And we had read many of the same books. And I asked him, I said, have you ever read any of Robert Russell's books? And he said, no, he hadn't. Well, I had an entire set of them. I think there were 8 of them. I had them in my briefcase. Now, I had been reading these books. I'd give them away here and there. And I just picked up a new set prior to leaving town. And I put them in my briefcase. So I took them out and I gave them to him. And he looked at me a little strange. And he said, well, let me pay you for them. And I said, no. I said, don't pay me for them. I said, you just take them and enjoy them. And, you know, I just smiled and I said, you know that you can never give anything away. It always comes back. In fact, pressed down and running over. I said, that's the rules. And he laughed and he said, yes, I know. Well, when I got back to Chicago, to my office, I began to get inundated with great material from M.C. Duncan. And the first thing he sent me was this transcript of a minister's sermon that was preached on November the 21st, 1976. Now, I received this on the 3rd of March, 1977, so the sermon was only a couple of months old. It was delivered by Reverend Norman Neves at the Church of the Servant in Oklahoma City. And M.C. Duncan wrote here, insist upon miracles today. Here he wrote, Bob, first 4 paragraphs, great story about wrong thinking, etc., etc. Best regards, M.C. Duncan. Now, this is a classic. It really is. Keep in mind, this is how a minister is starting a sermon, in Oklahoma City. He began by saying, I read a story in the paper the other day that not only caught my attention, but that continued to hold it and hold it the further I read. It was a story of a railway employee somewhere in Kansas who accidentally locked himself into a refrigerator car and then who wasn't able to escape. Perhaps you read the story also and know what I mean when I say it continued to hold my attention. Now, he said apparently this man had banged and banged on the side of the car to attract someone's attention, but apparently also no one heard him. So he finally gave up and resigned himself to his fate. Sometime during the night, as he felt his body becoming numb, he began to scribble some sentences on the wall of the car. Sentences recording some of his last sensations as he moved closer and closer to death. The first sentence said, I'm becoming colder. The second sentence, a little bit further down, said, still colder. Nothing to do but wait. Then it said, I'm slowly freezing to death. Half asleep now, I can hardly write. And then down at the bottom, this sentence which said, these may be my last words, which in fact they were. When the railroad car was opened the following day, they found him dead. But let me tell you something that's really startling about this story. The freezing apparatus on the car had been malfunctioning. It had not been operating properly for several days. And believe it or not, the temperature hadn't gotten below 49 degrees during the entire night that he was there. In other words, this man had become the victim of his own illusion. He had presumed that his time had come and his life was over, when in fact there was no need of that presumption at all. And so, even though the temperature had never fallen below 49 degrees, this man died nevertheless and isn't here to enjoy himself today. Neves went on to point out, he said, there's a lot of us that do that with our lives, aren't there? We misread the signs of our predicaments. We presume that things are worse than they really are. And so, like that man, we too become the victim of our own illusion. We die, if you will, even though the temperature of our circumstance never even gets close to freezing. Now, you see, this man used his reasoning factor, and he used it incorrectly. He let what he thought were circumstances control his thinking. That's the image he put in, and that's exactly what he got.